Hi, welcome to Kira's Handmade. My name is Ali. I'm a hunter and crafter and I live in the south of England with my husband David and our little dog Maple. I was going through cupboard a couple of weeks ago. You know, we had plenty of time, plenty of cleaning had to be done, and I was going through a box, and inside this box I thought there was going to be Christmas ornaments or something along those lines. No. It was about 114 crochet squares that I made about 5 years ago. 5 years ago I decided, oh my god, I need a blanket. It's gonna be wonderful. I remember always my grandmother's blanket. It was knitted, I think, and it was mine. It was my colchita, or like my little blanket, whenever I went to stay with her. And I thought I need to make something that, I don't know, heirloomy, I guess. But I abandoned it. I forgot about it, put it in a box while we were living at my in-laws, and then brought it home, stashed it in a cupboard and forgot about it. So when I was going through this box, I thought, oh my god, I need to finish it. Lockdown is perfect time to finish this. And I got myself started with finishing the squares, ended up running out of yarn, so instead of 154 squares that I was going to make initially, I ended up just settling for 132. But now that I have my 132 lovely squares, the sad reality is that I need to block them. I don't know if you know what blocking is, but if you're here, you probably do. But blocking is stretching your squares so the stitches are stretched and they're all the same size. So it takes the shape that you want it to have, because at the moment, for example, if you look at this, it's a bit sad around the corners and a bit just squished. So I need to do that, and I started 5 years ago. I bought foam mats and pins, and I sat down on the floor and I pinned and pinned and pinned, but it was awful and I hated it. I hated every second of it. It was just so cumbersome and so slow because I could only put one square at a time, and even though I had plenty of foam mats, it was just one per foam mat. So when I came to now thinking about what to do, I was like, I can't fathom the idea of blocking all these squares. There has to be a better way. So I went online and I googled blocking, I don't know, knitting blocking, crochet blocking, whatever, and somehow I found this magical device. It's called a blocking board, and I was like, where have you been all my life? You're amazing. It is literally just a block of wood with holes, kind of like a pegboard. So you put dowels in, and then you make your square as big or as small as you need it to be, and you can stack them. I was like, oh my god, I need it. But then I went online to look for it, to buy it, and it was between, I don't know, 20 something pounds and 44, I think. And I thought, I'm not gonna spend 44 pounds on a block of wood, because that I probably won't use a lot. So I thought, surely I can make this. It couldn't be that bad. So this is what we're gonna make today. We're gonna make a blocking board. For this project you will need a piece of wood. I've gone for a chopping board. I got this on Amazon. When I started this, it was in the middle of lockdown, so I didn't have access to a lot of the shops, and this was the best option I could find. It had the right thickness I was looking for. This is about 2 centimeters thick. This is why I ended up stuck with an asymmetric chopping board. And it was a bit of a pain, but it worked out really well in the end. But IKEA has some really nice and inexpensive options. You will also need some stainless steel dowels, but make sure that they're stainless steel, as you will need to get your squares a bit damp when you're blocking them, and you wouldn't want them to rust. A marker to help you mark where you'll be drilling. And a ruler to make sure that you have even spacing between the dots. Very important, a drill. In this case I'm using a Dremel drill, but you can use whatever you have at hand. And some drill bits, make sure that they're the correct size for your dowels, but make sure to also use good quality drill bits. This one wasn't great and did a bit of a botch job, you'll see. A tiny bit of tape so you can mark your drill so you know how far you need to go. And lastly, a little bit of sandpaper. I'm using 240 grade here, but you can use whatever you have at hand. You will only need a tiny bit and you'll use it to smooth your surface after drilling. The first step is to mark your dots using your Sharpie. Because of the shape of my board, I had to do some overcomplicated calculations and ended up creating a makeshift ruler. I won't bore you with my process because I know you'll learn from my mistakes and use a regular square or rectangular piece of wood, like any sensible person would have. But in hindsight, my makeshift ruler was actually great to help me keep track of where my dots needed to be, because I decided I wanted to leave 1.5 centimeters between each of my dots. So it was easier for me to use it instead of a standard ruler, but you don't have to do this. Make sure that the lines you're creating with your dots are as straight as possible, or you may end up with crooked lines, which you don't want when you're trying to create a tool to help you get evenly blocked squares. I ended up having to do a bit of cleaning up because I had some wonky dots, because I got a bit cocky, so don't rush it. If you have to do this, you can use some nail polish remover to rub them off. Now it's time to bring out the power tools and drill your holes. Don't forget to wear a mask while you drill. There will be a lot of sawdust flying around and you don't want to breathe it in. Like I mentioned earlier, I started using a different drill bit and it was a bit of a mess. Luckily, I gave up trying to make it work and changed it to a drill bit that came with my Dremel tool, and the difference was night and day. I made my holes 1.5 centimeters deep, and that's where the tape came into play. All you need to do is measure 1.5 centimeters from the tip of your drill bit and mark it with your Sharpie. Then all you have to do is put a piece of tape after that line. That way you know that you can only go that far in. Make sure to clear the sawdust every so often, so it doesn't get in the way. As the drill bit gets a bit hotter, you will also start noticing that the grooves of your drill bit get a bit clogged, so clean it as you go, or it won't work properly. It took me a few hours to drill all the holes, and I did it over a couple of days because I didn't want the drill to overheat. So I caught up with some podcasts and listened to music to keep me going. Once I finished drilling, I took a small piece of sandpaper and lightly sanded the surface, making sure to sand in the direction of the grain to avoid leaving any unwanted marks. I ran my hands every few passes to make sure that the surface was getting smoother until I was happy with it. I used a tiny bit of wood wax on some cotton wool to bring back the shine to the board, but you don't need to do this. And now let's do some blocking. You will need to get your squares a bit damp, but not wet for the blocking to work. So I'm using a tiny spray bottle for this. I like to spray both sides of my squares, and I can add a bit more water if I need to. For these squares, I'm placing my pins 11 spaces apart, which would make my squares about 16.5 centimeters by 16.5 centimeters. For the first one, I put my corner pins first and then slide my square down. As you can see, the sides were not straight yet, so I added more pins to the sides, placing them in every other hole. Now that I'm happy with the placement of my pins, I can start adding more squares. making sure to get them damp before sliding them down. So it wasn't too bad after all. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I've done already some blocking and it works perfectly. There are some squares that might be harder to block than others. For some reason I might have done them too tightly, I guess, but I will make them work. It's not, of course, 100% even where the lines are, but I don't think the difference is that much that would cause a lot of problems. And I know there are some wonky holes like the very first one, but I've turned that into my little needle and scissor holder for when I'm weaving the ends that I should have weaved before I did any of this. I'll show you how it looks after you take one out. So this is and this one has been there for a couple of days because it was Father's Day yesterday and I was out, I think, the day before. But yeah, so you can see now the edges are more edgy, square, pointy is the word I'm looking for. And yeah, I think it looks really nice. It looks like the stitches have like stretched a bit, which I'm sure will make the fabric a bit more fluid, I think. Here's a side-by-side comparison to give you an idea of the results. As you can see, the corners look sharper and the stitches are much more defined, which I'm sure will give my blanket a much nicer finish. I hope you enjoyed it. I really love making it, and I can see myself using it in the future, which is part of the reason why I made it. If you decide to make one, please remember to share it with me. You can find me on social media at KirosHMD. If you like this video, please like it, and if you want to see more, subscribe. And I hope to see you next time.